This week's episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by Charmin. Charmin has long-lasting mega rolls that aim to give you a better bathroom experience. Those who use Charmin really enjoy the go.
Don't put yourself on the shelf. I put a lot of who I was becoming on the back burner to pursue things that made other people money, that made other people happy. And I put myself on the shelf as a result of that. And if I had gone as balls to the wall for my side ventures as I am right now, maybe I would be, in a different place. Hey, this is Courtnee Futch, and you're listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers. Welcome to episode 258. I am so excited to get back in the driver's seat with our guest interviews. I miss doing them. I miss producing them. And I know you guys miss hearing them and being inspired by what our guests share every week. Today's episode is going to be super special. So back in 2017, on episode 59 and 60, we had a chance to chat with Courtnee Futch on the show to talk about her journey to her dream job. And to give you a little bit of a background about Courtney, she's a chef, baker, author, and entrepreneur that believes the best food is meant to feel like home. The Atlanta native has been baking since she was 8 years old and cooking professionally since the age of 17 when she founded Thunder Cakes Bakery, and years later she founded the Spread Catering Company. Well, guess what? 9 days after recording that first interview, Courtney got fired. So I had her come back on and talk about what happened and where she's going next. So it's 2021 now, and we wanted to have Courtney on to give us an update on where her life has gone since that 2017 interview. So many things have happened. So many things have transpired. So many new entrepreneurial endeavors have been uncovered for Courtney. So she's going to go deep into all the things that she's been up to and also all the things that she's learned about herself. Some of the things that we discussed in that episode are Courtney's career journey, what it's like to find new passions, how she had to pivot her strategy post-COVID, how a Glamour Magazine feature basically changed her life, the other side of dream driving, which includes battling fear and doubt. And Courtney's going to give us a deep dive into the process behind launching her debut cookbook, Early Enough. Can't wait for you guys to listen to that. But before we get into the episode, if you enjoyed this, please make sure that you're sharing with your community. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing. Screenshot this episode, send the link to a friend, email it, LinkedIn it, whatever. But make sure you're sharing this with someone else who you think will be inspired by Courtney's words. If you want to get Dreams and Drive merchandise, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. And if you want to be on our weekly email newsletter, The Keys, you can sign up by going to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. All right, let's hear from Courtney.
Hi, Raina. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe it, girl.
I know a lot has happened. So listeners, if you guys were tuned in to Dreams and Drive earlier on, Courtney was our episode 59 and episode 60 guest because we had some things happen during the interview, right?
Yeah.
The first time we met Courtney, she was talking to us about her journey to the dream and how she got her dream job, right? What you thought was your dream job. And then we had to do another episode because Courtney got fired from that dream job, right? Courtney, fill us in on that. Tell our listeners a little bit, listeners who didn't hear those episodes, what happened.
Oh, man. Okay. So I started at a food distribution company. I've been working in the food industry at this point for just a little over 5 years professionally. And that was like my first year in the corporate world. I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I finally got like this great gig. They're sending me to Paris. They're doing all this stuff because it's an international gourmet food distribution company. And I was like maybe a month in, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. They're sending me to Paris. I'm going to Miami. I'm going to Vegas. I was maybe 22 at the time. And I just remember thinking, wow, like I'm really on top of the world. This job is hella lit. And then not even 3 months into that job, they let me go. So the role itself was a sales function. So my job was to sell a very particular product to to restaurants, to bars, things like that. It was a fruit puree, really beautiful product, still use the product to this day. But ultimately, as great of a job as I was doing at marketing the product and getting there, getting more exposure for the brand, where I struggled was like converting that into actual, like, really tangible sales that were strong enough for our, for the team to really, like, want to keep me on, which was devastating. I remember being just so disappointed and feeling like I had really failed. Obviously, it's like my second job in, like, the real world. I'm like, I've never been fired before. Like, this is crazy.
And it wasn't even, you were only there for a few months, right?
Yeah. Like, like, I made it to 87 days. 87 days, and then they let your girl go. But as devastated as I was, it was funny because I had something else lined up, like, immediately in the thereafter, which was just such a blessing. I kind of, looking back on the whole situation, I'm like, wow, okay, like, they set me up to kind of be where I needed to be. Like, I got let go so that I was free and available for the blessings that were, like, to come later. But if you had asked me on that particular day, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
All right, Courtney. So, when we left in episode 60, you were just starting your first days at HelloFresh, right? What did you, it's funny because you were talking about how this getting fired kind of set you up on the career trajectory that you are now, right? So talk to me about the HelloFresh times and how that really changed who you were professionally and personally as a person.
Yeah. The move from kind of restaurant sales, and even prior to that, I did like a 3-month stint at a PR firm before leaving to join the food distribution company, had really kind of left me in this position of, like, I really don't know what career path I want to take. I just know I wanted to be in food. I hadn't learned a whole lot yet about what my specific skill set was. But when I was approached about the role at HelloFresh, it was a procurement role. So I was sitting on the procurement team, but as a marketing function, which is really interesting. So brand partnerships there looked pretty different than the way that most people use the term brand partnerships nowadays. But I was working with the culinary team. I was, working with the supply chain team to better understand, like, the flow through of products, like, into HelloFresh boxes. And then, of course, I got to flex my creative and, like, marketing muscles by helping write copy, by thinking through, like, imagery and what is this final result going to look like in the box. And it was in that role that I figured out how multifaceted any given role could be, right? If you know enough about what you're doing, like, you can kind of really spread your wings just about anywhere. And it was a really important lesson for me to learn because I'd been this whole time feeling like I just didn't fit in anywhere, if that makes sense. Like, I felt like I was like, okay, like, I've got all these skills, but nobody seems to know what to do with my skills. And HelloFresh, working there, was the first time where I felt like I got to flex every muscle that I had. I got to work with, other creatives and on my creativity. I got to think about things in, like, a very logistical sort of way, which is the other part of how my brain works. And, focus in on supply chain and think through the numbers and save the company money and make the company money. And I got to really hone in on, like, a really broad skill set while still very actively thinking about the food that was going into HelloFresh boxes on a daily basis, which I think made me just so well-rounded as I continued my journey, like, going to work for other companies. I stayed at HelloFresh for 1.5 years, and then decided I wanted to move around a bit. So, now I'm actually back.
You decided to leave them, or was it kind of like you had something else lined up?
I decided to leave HelloFresh because I did have something else lined up. And then that offer actually fell through, which was unfortunate, but I found another job like 2 weeks after that.
You're the queen of finding jobs, girl. You are the queen. Guys, if you know Courtney, she does not stay unemployed for long. All right. She hustles.
And it's really funny that you say that because I was thinking about that the other day of just, like, how many places I've worked. I looked at my resume the other day. I'm up to 7 over the last, like, 5 years. And I've done year-long stints or a little bit longer than that at least 3 of those places. And those are the places that, like, I'm constantly referring to. I feel like that's where I learned the most and grew the most, of course. But the places that were actually most developmental for me were those really short stints. I'm at a place for 3 months. I'm like, ooh, I really don't like this. Because learning what you don't like was just as important for me as learning what I did like. Like, Amen. I honed in on what I was good at. But I was also like, ooh, girl, you got to be honest with yourself. I'm not very good at this. I'm not, the corporate catering world for me does not slap. The PR world for me, we don't like that. I'm trying to think like other sales driven jobs. Absolutely freaking not. And I'm a relationship building person, but that doesn't mean that I need to be, in the sales world in order to flex that muscle. So I feel like I just like figured out a lot of what I could and couldn't do in the corporate world. And then that kind of allowed me to really take a step back and figure out what I wanted to do entrepreneurially with like the rest of my food career.
And I love that you mentioned all this because I think figuring out what doesn't work, as you said, is so essential to just our own development, because so many times we feel like everything has to be perfect, especially as young entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs in corporate worlds that aren't always nice to us. We're sometimes told stay at a place for like till they fire you, right? Or stay there for as long as you can. But you were somebody who were like, listen, I don't need to do that. I can successfully find the next position. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to stay where I'm not needed, right? So I really applaud you for all of that, Courtney. But along the, during your professional growth, right? What was your mindset as an entrepreneur, right? I know you had Thunder Cakes in college. You kind of were doing it part-time, a little bit here and there, right? Did you ever see yourself going back to it full-time?
I did not. I'd always imagined some new form of Thunder Cakes would like pop back up in my life. And I felt that way mostly because I felt like I was still drawn to like finding outlets for myself in the food world that weren't necessarily related to the work that I did during my 9 to 5. And so little things kept popping up, like I'd want to bake somebody a cake just because I could, but like I knew I wasn't interested in doing it at scale. So I also knew that Thunder Cakes wasn't something I could come back to in full because I just didn't have the sort of emotional or mental bandwidth for the sort of tasks that Thunder Cakes requires. Like running a bakery is a lot. And I'm certainly not going to try to like do it out of my, my current kitchen. Like it just doesn't make sense for me. So I wasn't willing to put that investment back in. But Thunder Cakes was very much so like a right time, right place. I was in college. It paid for college type thing. And I was very okay with looking at it like that. And I knew that coming out of school, like if I never do Thunder Cakes again, I got to be okay with that.
That's tough, right? That's tough because it was such a big part of your identity, especially coming out of college, and people knew you for that. So being able to say, I can put this on the shelf for now, and it doesn't make it any less worthwhile or any less, it doesn't make you a failure. I think that's the thing that a lot of us feel like, is it all right to hang up a dream and start a new one or start a new version of the dream,
Yeah. And it's funny. I was just listening to a podcast the other day and I don't remember what the specific phrase for this is called, but a lot of times we have a fear of moving on to a new thing because of the time that's already been invested. Yeah. And, people do it with jobs, people do it with their businesses, they do it with their personal relationships, they do it with friendships, they do it with, all manner of things, both positive and negative. And one of the things that I'm learning about myself is, as long as most other things in my life are constant, I have no problem walking away from things that just do not serve me. And so I've always had like I will do my best to make Thunder Cakes work as long as Thunder Cakes is working for me. The moment it starts to stress me out beyond what I think the value of it is, I got to go. I have to do something else. And so I feel that way about everything that I'm attached to, with the exception of like people, but like with all of my ventures, it's like, okay, this works until it really, really doesn't. And I'm willing to fight for it in the interim, but I'm not so willing to attach myself to like other people's ideas of what I should be doing. And Thunder Cakes was such a huge part of my identity. But as I got older, I learned that I have a whole lot of other parts of my identity that were more worth me holding on to. Than trying to hold on to like who I was in college. I was 16 when I left for college. Like I was a baby. I would hope that I had grown since then to be able to like shift and transform and do other things. And like, there are people now, I mean, not right now because of the Rona, but in 2019, early 2020, when I'd be out and like people would see me, they'd still be like, yo, Thunder Cakes. And I'm like, damn, I loved it, but I hated it because one, now, of course, I'll decontextualize from college. Everybody thinks they're talking about my butt. And then the other thing is that I've moved on. I've done at least, four new projects since Thunder Cakes days. I want to be known for my other work. Like now just call me a chef. That's all I'm interested in.
Mic drop right there, right?
And that's on what? Mary had a rack of lamb.
So let's fast forward to then. I want to say, was it 2019 when you started the dinner party concept? Talk to me about what made you realize that this was an avenue that you could explore.
Gosh, okay. So late 2018 or in 2018, I moved into a new space.
Banging, beautiful, guys. If you know, her space is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. So I moved into a new apartment, no roommate, just me. And at the same time, was just going through a lot of other like personal transitions, like was out of like a very long relationship, and was just feeling like a sense of like freedom. And I just felt really uninhibited to like run at whatever I wanted to do full force. And so one of the things that I started doing really haphazardly was having people over for like dinner parties. And I'd be like, yo, y'all, just like cover your cost of like food because I really want to cook for like 30 people. And, to know me is to know that I've never cooked things in like a small portion size ever. So the idea of cooking for even more people was like so much fun for me. I'm like, yeah, I'll have everybody over. Like we'll hang out, we'll play games, do stuff. And it started off that way. And all I was interested in was just having my costs covered. I just didn't want to like go broke cooking for people because it would easily cost me like $400 to feed them at a time. And that was like, I did my first real like big dinner party thing. It was actually a brunch around Thanksgiving in November 2018. Over time, I started like really thinking, okay, like I want to do this and I want to start like making money at it. So I was still not charging people. I was just kind of like recomping my costs up and through like February. So really from November to February was all about figuring out like, how do I scale this? What sort of menus do I want to do?
Kind of thing.
Exactly. And like, I really, I'm a huge concept person. So I was like, I want like themes and I want menus and, things like South of France emerged from that. Things like Trap Soul, SEOUL, like all kind of came out of that ideation stage. And then it was about, okay, like, how do I execute? And the dinner parties in the beginning were just for fun for me. Like, it was like, okay, like, how do I want to make some money? One. And then two, I want to have a whole bunch of people over. God, I missed that pre-Rona. And that was pretty much it. I was just like, yeah, like I'm doing this, but it's for me and like, it's semi-open to the public, but mostly it's a gathering of my friends. And what it then shifted into was that people, one of my good friends, Leandra, asked me to host her birthday party, here at my home in March of 2019. And, it was for her birthday. She was the first person that like I'd thrown a party for, that wasn't like, just me kind of doing it from my own volition. And it turned out so well. And I posted about it. And then you were the next dinner party after that, the Dreams and Drive
the Dreams
party.
and Drive dinner party. And people love that. Mm-hmm. And it was so fun. I think because I've known you for so long, side note guys, Courtney and I were both in the same media fellowship program when we were in college. And just seeing you blossom and really seeing you as a person that use your gifts and use your skills to create a life that you loved, right? And you were able to do that while also having the corporate job, while also exploring other things. So I'm like, you know what? I want to work with Courtney. And that turned into such a successful event. And I feel like we also learned a lot of things about like what would make it work, like how to do the ticketing system, right? And how to work with a lot of guests and all of that. So I feel like we were also learning concepts that would help both of us professionally as well. Right. And, I will say this, Raina, I feel like there's like a really wonderful sort of magic in working with people who are willing to work with you. Mm-hmm. Because my biggest thing is that I don't promise perfection. I try to give people very realistic understandings of like what could happen. And that is what makes like my job easier to do. And so it's always great when like you have people who at least understand like your vision and your intention. And you can say to them, okay, not all of this has been like worked out yet where it's like a perfect plan, but if you're willing to be flexible with me, you and me can make some magic. And I feel like, you really took that chance on me. Leandra took that chance on me. A lot of people, as I began to like continue to do it, I'm like, okay, like there are optimizations that I'm making. There are things that I'm learning. And it really all started off because there were people who like just kind of saw the vision like yourself and were willing to work with me to find
a vision for the both of us, which I'm super grateful for. And I think about that all the time. Because yours was literally the second dinner party that I'd ever thrown, and kind of like been hired to do for someone else.
And it wasn't small. We had like a lot of people. We had, I want to say
50
over
people.
It
was like 50 people. Like 50.
I kind of think about, I think Issa Rae talks about this in one of the interviews she did. It's like, sometimes when you're on the come up, when you're trying to build something, find your peers, right? Build with your peers because they're the ones who are hustling with you, right? Let's say like I tried to go and find some, at the time, right? You definitely will be at this level one day, some $1 million chef, right? Who was charging me $2,000 a head. And I was just trying to do something just for the sake of working with somebody who was quote unquote a celebrity. There was so much that would have been missed in not connecting with my friend who is doing something that I can then support, right? Because I know then a lot of people started following you, a lot of people wanted to work with you, and it also helped build your confidence as this is something that I can do and people will enjoy. And it helped me also realize, Raina, like you can do events. People want to like see you in person because I had never done an event in person before then, right? I don't know why I was so stuck behind the laptop, but it kind of forced me to get out of my comfort zone. And you helped push me in a lot of ways as well.
Oh, I love that for us.
So you did this dinner party, right? Did you ever think were you thinking of scaling it? Or what was your what was your thoughts at this time? Like, all right, what can I do with this? It's a concept that people love. I think I can profit from it. What were your next thoughts?
Yeah. What I wanted to know was how I could I just wanted to perfect it. Like my whole thing, I think people focus in too much on growth before like grasp. And
that's a quote right there.
That's a tweetable.
Yes.
Because I really for me, it was about like, how do I get this so down packed that like it's an operation? And I was just starting to kind of get into my groove of that, like hosting for other people, having my own parties. What does the timing look like? When do people need to get here? When you invite people at 2:00, they're not going to pull up till 3. What sort of logistics do I need to always be considering? And the thing that's funny about the spread is the way that it just generated so many other sort of one-off opportunities. Then it was about like corporate catering. And so I'd be getting hit up by I've got a best friend actually who works at Indeed. And he was like, oh, we're doing an event with Google and LinkedIn. You want in? I'm like, do I want in? Absolutely.
I remember that because didn't I reach out to you? I think you were like, hey, I need some help. Is anybody like available?
Yep.
I reached out to you and I was pregnant. I didn't tell you I was going to tell you when I saw you because you probably been like, girl, where's that belly from? Right. But I was pregnant and I was bored. I'm like, Courtney needs help. I think you were offering like a little stipend or something for the day. I remember that. And then the Rona hit, right?
And then Rona hit like right then and there. And I was like, dang, okay. But what was so wonderful about that is now, I'm in the door at least at Google. Should they ever decide to resume in-office events, like they've got my W-9, they've got all my information, they know what my price hits for. The price has gone up since then, so we don't have to make some adjustments. But, I'm now at least those relationships are established, which I think is really cool. And then, but those sort of opportunities started coming up the more visible I made myself. And there was just so much opportunity that kind of came from that. Then at the same time, the Glamour opportunity came up. And mind you, all of this is like top of 2020. So I've spent 2019 head down. I was working at a company called Mouth out in Brooklyn, which I was doing corporate gifting like for them. So a lot of like curation, really hands-on with like the food products, just figuring out like what sort of gift boxes like would make the most sense and things like that. And it allowed me like a lot of creativity. Like I got to flex a lot of my creative muscles. But I also learned a lot about what it means to be a reselling business, which was interesting for me. And, at the same time, like I'm doing dinner parties. So that was it. It was like, I'm head down. I was trying to go back to culinary school, or trying to start culinary school. And like, ultimately, just kind of like gave up on that because the time investment was actually keeping me from doing the thing that I really wanted to be doing, which was hosting dinner parties and like gathering people in spaces and like, and all that. So that was like really, really exciting for me. After that, Glamour happened. So like the casting thing went out from, you know, the team at Condé Nast, and they're like, hey, we're looking for either chefs or artists or, you know, creative entrepreneurs to be willing to talk about like their finances, you know, on camera, and also show us like a day in their lives. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. So I showed them my space, or like I shot them an email. I showed them my space. I'm like, hey, you know, like, here's what I do. You know, here's what I make. And obviously I work in the corporate world as well. But you know, so that salary, of course, it was like a really nice talking point. But at the same time, everything else that I was doing was kind of getting me to 2/3 of what my salary was in additional cash.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, like this is a really interesting story. They came in, they shot, like all of this happened within like a 1 week span. Like I shot a note over to them. We set up a FaceTime. They came to like scout my apartment, and like check out like where the lighting and everything should go. Then we filmed like 2 days later. That was on February 28th. Corona hit 2 weeks later. And then kind of like a radio silence. But in the meantime, a really wonderful thing happened. Something about seeing myself on camera, like with the Glamour team here, really made me, and I'd always wanted to do like the Food Network thing. I
remember that. That was always like, you wanted to be the next, like, what was wasn't there a Black female chef that you loved?
Sunny Anderson. And I've since moved beyond that. And now I want to be the Black Martha Stewart. I love me some Sunny, don't get me wrong. But I feel like my interests are just not confined to food. And I want to like expand beyond that. So I was like, okay, seeing myself on camera was really dope. Like, how do I replicate that? You know? And I had to have like I was like, okay, like Courtney, you know, you've been saying for like years that you want to be, you know, like on TV. And, you know, you have the personality and you've got all these things. And like people tell you all the time, you've got great camera presence. But it was something about having like that national publication, you know, kind of validate that for me. I was like, yeah, you know, I
see yourself on those monitors, right? The little playback monitors.
Girl, it got me. And I was like, okay, come on, lighting. So I was like, that I look like this. And that was really cool for me. So I went, like I bought light, like I went on Amazon like the day after they left. I bought lighting. I bought tripods, I bought all types of stuff. I'm like, I have no idea how they did this, but I took a picture of the setup that they did and I just tried to replicate it with things that I had around my apartment. I just started filming videos and like shooting content. And my first video dropped like not even a week into quarantine. And I remember just like everybody was just like so excited. They're like, oh my God, Courtney, like the cooking videos. Yes. And so I just kept doing them. And then finally, eventually 2 months later, the Glamour video dropped. And I already had like 10 videos just out of me cooking things here in my kitchen, was editing them myself, was shooting them myself, and really, really loved it and just honed in on that. And then that since moved me into everything virtual. So now I don't do dinner parties anymore at all. I mean, I always could, but I don't want to because there's still very much a panini press going on outside. So I just want to, you know, keep it virtual for as long as I can. And now I do corporate cooking classes, private virtual cooking classes. My whole thing now is about food education. And it's just been such an interesting journey to kind of get from point A to point B.
Isn't it amazing when you think back about it and think back and look at like things had to happen in order for things to happen? You get what I mean? Right? If Corona never hit, right? And if that Google gig never got canceled, maybe life would have looked different, right? Maybe your trajectory would have looked totally different, but things work out as they should. Like, that's so amazing to think about, right?
It really is. It really, really is. I feel like I say this all the time, but one of the things that I think I love most about myself, because I've been spending a lot of time like reflecting, and the thing I know for a fact that I love most about myself is my ability to like see just a glimmer of like an opportunity in something and then just chase it full speed. So if it's, oh, I really like doing dinner parties, because they're fun. And I even like wasn't even thinking about monetizing them at the time, but I'm like, oh, but there could be something here. Rolling it out in iterations or just going balls to the wall with it is something I'm absolutely known for. And it's my favorite thing. And so I feel like it's one of those things where you have to be, I think, at least aware enough in yourself to recognize the things that spark even brief, like momentary joy and find sustainable ways to chase them.
This episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by Charmin. Those who use Charmin really enjoy the go. So you guys know, Charmin has a variety of products to satisfy your to-go needs. Now, what we're talking about is our bathroom experience. That is one thing that we all have in common. All of us have the need to go, so why not enjoy the go with Charmin? Softness matters at home and in the bathroom, and Charmin has a variety of products that makes your to-go experience that much better. There's Charmin Ultra Soft, which has irresistible cushiony softness. There's Charmin Ultra Strong for superior strength and absorbency. Or you can try Charmin Flushable Wipes and get the freshest clean Charmin has. And don't forget Charmin's long-lasting Mega Rolls. Charmin aims to give you a better bathroom experience. At Charmin, they believe that won't happen if you finish it all off with the wrong toilet paper, which is why they make a toilet paper that's just right for everybody. So Dream Drivers, try Charmin and enjoy a better bathroom experience. Let's get back to the episode. Were you ever scared to ever pursue something? Because that keeps a lot of Dream Drivers back, right? They get too much in their head and they aren't really gung-ho about executing the vision that comes to them. So what would you say to that person who's nervous about just testing out this idea or new ideas?
I have been scared because even though the vision for me had always been like, I want a TV show and I want to be on Food Network and, or whatever, like I want to be cooking on a large platform, whatever platform that looked like. I'd held myself back from doing that for, I think, a lot of reasons that this year I just kind of like abandoned. In a more vulnerable, I'm going to share something like kind of personal here. Like, okay. I was always really concerned that I'm a thicker girl. And it's something that I definitely thought was not going to be like received well. Mm-hmm. And so I was really just hiding myself. Like, I've had the personality the whole time. Like, that's never changed. I've had the interest, I've had, maybe not completely the skill set, but I've absolutely been like TV ready for a long time. But didn't necessarily think that I looked like I was. And it was something that was like really holding me back. And it wasn't until I had that moment of seeing myself on camera, that was like 2020, like it was March 2020 or February 2020, where it hit me that like, oh, okay. Like, I was so afraid of seeing what I might look like, in this, because I thought it was going to highlight all of my greatest insecurities. And it didn't. And so I had been holding myself back, doing this analysis paralysis, like going back and forth with myself, like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be well received until I'm, and this is like an internalized thing, but like, oh, until I'm, a certain size, or until, my acne clears up, or, any of these things that all that negative self-talk we give ourselves. And, when the video like went live and, all these other things, and then the videos that I like made myself and they were just so well received, I was like, oh, so like you mean so you don't necessarily need to be skinny in order to be successful? And I've just been holding myself back in that way, which was really strange. Now that I'm thinking about it, but
it's not strange. It's not like we all have those insecurities and those fears, right? Things that don't seem right to us. Other people don't even see. They don't even care,
True. Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that was like the biggest lesson that I had to learn. It's like the things that we think about ourselves, we're always our harshest critics. But put it out there and to be willing to iterate, because that was the other thing. Like, I got feedback on the first video, which was, and a lot of it was just unwarranted feedback. Like, I wasn't necessarily asking anybody, but they were like, oh, I can't see what you do when you do this. And I was like, oh, okay. In the next video, I'll make sure that like, I make sure that that's visible. Or, oh, I think, you talk about it in the video, but you didn't write it in the recipe. What's that step? Cool. Like, and it's just been kind of like a constant, education. I've been crowdsourcing all of my feedback like this whole time. And with every video, I think I'm becoming much more clear in like what my vision is, because people are telling me what they're missing. Which has been really helpful. So that's the other piece of like, yeah, fear is, it's an okay reason to not, but a willingness to just like get in there and be honest with people and figure it out. Because the other thing is, everybody thinks that they need things to be perfect from the jump. We've got to release that theory. Like, we have to let that shit go, because perfection is not really ever the goal, or at least not for me. It never has been. Like, it's like, okay, like I'm just going to be honest with people and tell them that I'm figuring my stuff out. And hopefully they'll be willing to figure my stuff out with me. And if they're willing to do that, we could probably make some magic together. And I think that like when people approach things that way, like I have a lot of homegirls who like I talk to about this and they're like, yeah, you know, like I'm just kind of iterating with people, but I'm transparent about it. And the transparency is what's going to get you further than any perfectly packaged product. It's like, hey, y'all, we're having some issues right now, but communicate that to people. And the likeliness that they'll still be willing to work with you is so high.
So, you know, you're making these cooking videos that you're releasing on YouTube and Instagram, mostly Instagram at this point, right?
Yeah, mostly Instagram. I'm having a hard time doing like the wide content and like the vertical content at the same time.
Stay in the lane that works, right? Stay in the lane that works. You don't have to be everywhere. People will find you where they need to find you. But so you're making this content. What was your soul telling you what's next for Courtney, right? Because you know when you kind of seeing where things are going, like what was kind of ruminating in your soul about, all right, I got to do this next?
I've wanted to write a cookbook my whole life. It wasn't until I shot my first video. I shot my first video and then I called my friend and I was like, I'm finna write a cookbook. Like I said it just like, I'm finna like just deep Southern. I'm finna write a cookbook. And he was like, oh, okay. Why now? And I was like, why not now? Because I'd been sitting with all these ideas. Mind you, like I've got recipes out the ass. Like I've been thinking about food for such a significant part of my adult life, whether it was desserts, and then I started moving into savory. And the moment that I did, I feel like all of the light bulbs just really started going off for me. And I needed a place to put them. And sharing them in video was nice. But the production time, all of those things, like that was a major time suck for me. And I was like, I can't just keep putting out these videos like for free when I could be monetizing my expertise. And when I thought about what my expertise was in, I'm like, what do I love? Like what meal allows me to show up as my full self? And that only thing, truthfully, was brunch. I was like, it's sweet, it's savory, it's, you know, there's space for cocktails. There are all these things. All these passions that I have, all these interests that I have, the one space where they show up first is in the brunch occasion. I'm writing a damn cookbook. And that was in April. And I didn't tell anybody.
In 2020, right?
In 2020. Yeah. So like the timeline, just to like remind even myself here, February 28th, shot the Glamour video. March 15th, quarantine hit. The week of like March 20th, I was shooting my first video, shot the first video, edited the video went live. I called Eric and I was like, yo, I'm writing a cookbook.
When did Glamour video drop?
May, like late April. It dropped late April, like right before Mother's Day. And so I was like, okay, like this is what I'm doing. So I was already pulling together like what recipes do I want to work on? What themes? My plan originally, girl, was to drop it as an ebook. When I finally told the interwebs what I'd been working on, people started sending me these messages about, oh my God, your cookbook is the first I'm ever going to own. I'm putting it on my coffee table.
And they didn't even know that you're like, it's just going to be a little digital thing.
Right. And here I was thinking small. I mean, not that I was thinking small, right? I was thinking about like, what is the quickest way to get to like this end goal that I have? The moment that like, I got like maybe 5 messages like that in like one day. And I sat there and I'm a crier girl. So I cried first because I'm like, people have that much faith in me that like, they will want to buy it.
You never know. People see things in you that it may take you a while to see yourself.
Yeah. And it took me a minute. And that's why I said like, I'm always so grateful. And this is like, right after the Glamour video had come out, that like I told people like, hey, like, yeah, I'm writing a cookbook. And I didn't even tell people what it was about. They were just like, yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm like, okay, bet. That's nice. And then, you know, in like May, late June is when I really started honing in on like brunch as the category. And then when I shared it, like, and that was going to be the theme, everybody was like, oh my God, this is so great. Because at this point, we've been in the house now for like 3 months. And you can't go to brunch anymore. At least you shouldn't be. Our world was changing. I didn't realize that the changes that were going to be so long term. But at the time, I'm like, yeah, this is actually really helpful because this will guide people through home cooking, and having these small celebrations, these micro celebrations for themselves. And at the root of what I do at every dinner party is about celebrating other people. Every cake I've ever made for Thunder Cakes was in celebration of someone else and encouraging people to celebrate themselves and allowing other people to celebrate them. And if celebration's at the root of what I do, then how do I package that for people to be equipped to do that now that I can't be the one to do that for them? Like, what's that look like? And so early enough, it really started to take form the longer we were in the house, because there were so many more things that I was missing. I realized I was just missing so much. I missed going to brunch in New York City. I missed, the banter and
the music, right?
Because you have the music. And the music. And so I just started pulling all these things together. And the more I did, I was like, okay, I've got 89 recipes. Now they all need song pairings. Why do they need song pairings? Because I'm always in here cooking to music. If it's not trap, then it's like a alternative, like R&B sort of situation. And I wanted to be able to share that with people. Like I'm known at my dinner parties for like my playlist. How do I give people that experience and like make it easy for them? And so there's a playlist in the book. Each song or each recipe has a song pairing. More than half of the cocktails in the book have more than half of the recipes in the book have a cocktail pairing. And I just wanted to take the guesswork out of it for people. And so Early Enough was kind of born in the pandemic as a result of me personally not being able to go to brunch, but just recognizing the fact that a lot of people were going to be struggling with the changes and need to figure out how to give themselves some of these really joyous celebratory experiences. And it's hands down the best thing that ever happened to me. I wrote the book starting in April, was just all about concepting and recipes. By August, I had finished writing the recipes themselves. We did the photo shoot in 4 days while my foot was broken here in my apartment.
Wait, for all the recipes?
Yeah, all 89 recipes were shot in a 4-day period here.
So you had to make them all in 4 days?
Girl, yes. I would never do it again.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit, right? Logistically, had you ever made a cookbook before?
No.
So logistically, right? How did you even go about, like, did you Google it? Like, what did Courtney say? Right, I've never done this before, but I'm going to make it happen. This is what I have to learn how to do. Like, what was your thought process? You don't have to take us through like everything you did, but what was the process?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was actually just a lot of research. Okay. I knew I was going to hire somebody to so originally it was actually going to be very DIY because I wanted it to be like a moneymaker for me, given that I couldn't do dinner parties. Mm-hmm. So I bought a new phone so that I could shoot, and it was just going to be like my photo phone. Like, just called up AT&T and was like, yo, can I get an upgrade, but don't connect it to a line? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I got a phone just like specifically for pictures, and, started like painting backdrops, because if there was anything I knew, it was that the food photography was what was going to carry the book. So I was like, okay, like I need to take pictures. I knew that I needed to, of course, have the recipes like lined up, tightened up. I looked at maybe 5 of my favorite cookbooks and started making a list of commonalities between each of the recipes, like in terms of format, how are they laid out? What are things that I need to be like super mindful of? Every time I put tablespoons, it needs to be TBSP instead of like the full tablespoons. Like those are things that like I started making note of very early on. Mm-hmm. Because the writing, the photography is very important, but it's the writing and the ease to follow that was going to carry the book and like make it a household staple. So that was like one of the first things I did. Like, how does recipe writing work? Because I've been writing recipes, but like they weren't like Bon Appetit style, where they're like formatted in this specific way. So that was the first thing. And then the second piece of that was, who the hell is going to print my book? Like, what does book publishing look like? And so I spent like a month doing research on different companies, getting quotes, understanding print on demand or ordering the books myself, like which is a better option, all of those things. And then at the same time, it was really just about like formatting. Now, the formatting, I always say it was like the hardest part. I learned so much about myself though, in terms of like project management. I'm actually incredibly good at it.
And that's where your corporate background also comes into play, because you knew that being organized can help you in so many ways, right?
Absolutely. And I say this all the time too. Like the fact that I was working full time while this was going on, and my boss had just gone out on paternity leave. So I had taken over his role as well, was the best and worst thing that could have it was the best thing that could have happened to me in like my corporate career. But just made everything so crazy for that particular period in my life. Like trying to publish a cookbook, finish all the recipes, edit all the recipes, hire people to, hire my photographer, hire a copy editor, which I did, hire somebody to help me finish formatting the inside of the book because I was just struggling because I ended up having to design it myself. All of these things I ended up having to do myself. And the number of people who touched the book in total is 4. It's myself for almost all of it, the photographer, Jackie Barr, who's phenomenal. And we added photos in later from another photographer, which are my lifestyle, like me as Courtney shots. And then my colleague who designed the cover of the book. 4 people for a whole cookbook. It was crazy. People have much larger teams than that. Usually, production assistants and food stylists and all of these other things. And this was like a very homegrown, at my stove, whipping up 89 recipes for 4 days straight.
I don't know. How did you survive that? Like, coffee? Like, girl,
I almost didn't. For starters, I was maybe lit the whole time because, cocktail pairings were part of it. So like we'd start off in the morning. And when my photographer got here, I'd have a cocktail ready for the both of us. I'm like, you ready to do this, sis? She'd be like, yeah. So we would just like hop kind of right into it. And I love her so much because she was just willing to like jump into the thick of it with me. It's very rare that you find people who are also like, who have that same level of like grit. And it's just like, she hadn't done this before either. She's not really into food photography. I just had a vision. And I felt like if there was anybody who was going to help me with that vision, it was going to be her because I felt like she saw me. And that was so huge.
Crazy times can produce crazy, like, what am I trying to say here? Like sometimes craziness, right? Or just hecticness, chaos can actually inspire and build in us things that we never knew we had. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. What is it? Pressure makes diamonds?
Yeah.
Like that's absolutely how I felt.
So talk to us a little bit about how, I know you said that you wanted this to be a moneymaker, right? So what was your marketing strategy? What was going to be like, did you think the book would be as successful as it was?
Okay. So funny enough, I still haven't rolled out a marketing strategy for Early Enough. I dropped Early Enough.
I wouldn't have known. I thought like this girl got it all planned out, pre-orders, that,
No. So I'm going to tell you something that nobody else knows yet because I believe in transparency. I dropped the pre-order. So we did the photo shoot from the 6th through the 10th of August. My birthday is on August 13th. I knew one thing going into the photo shoot is that I want to be able to drop the book cover on my birthday and have pre-order go live on my birthday. That's all I knew. It was really all I cared about. So we did the shots, like we did 4 days. So our third day was the day that we got the cover shot. Before she left that day, I had my photographer send it over to my editor, or not my editor, my cover designer, Haley. And she shot that over to her, these huge, like gigantic, photo files when they're raw, and had Haley like start working on that. Haley sent me back over hand lettering, all of these options. I was at my homegirl's wedding looking at like PDFs of like different hand lettering and styling and everything. So like the font on Early Enough is like completely hand lettered by my friend. Like nobody else in the world like has that font, which I really wanted. I wanted touches like that. And that was on August 10th, right? So we're going back and forth. I'm like, okay, this is what I want it to look like. She shot me over a few like different designs. We picked the design. I had her edit it into a few different like formats so that it looked like hyper stylized and editorial for like when I dropped the pre-order link. I spent all day on the 12th, like up until midnight, kid you not, up until midnight, just getting the website, up and going. I mean, it was already up, like it's on the Thunder Cakes website. So it was just like getting the product up, doing all the e-commerce backend things, writing the description for the book, which like I hadn't even done yet. I had intro copy and all these other things, but like I hadn't actually like put it together. And I was like, oh snap. And like for all the other things that I'd written, I just hadn't considered how I was going to describe the book until the day before pre-order. So I'm like, okay, now I'm back and forth sending it to my homegirl, Alyssa. I'm like, what do you think about this? And she's like, oh, I love it. So imagine, that there's a meme of Elmo, I think typing frantically.
Yes.
Me, AF, like back and forth, which is crazy. And then that night at midnight, I drop it like right as I'm turning 26, bam, on the internet, early enough pre-order, pew, 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 right? And I was so excited. But what I did, because I was freaking out, I shut my phone off. I was like, I can't. Yeah, like I was like, I'm not. Drop that thing at midnight. I called Eric. It was like, okay, like it's live. I sent it to a couple people who I knew wanted like first dibs. My homegirl Perry was the first one to buy the book officially, and I was like, all right, I'm having a cocktail and I'm going to sleep. And that's exactly what I did. I shut off my phone. I woke up in the morning and I had 250 orders already.
Courtney, I don't know why I want to like cry for you like right now, right? It's
because girl, I was crying.
How did that feel?
I was overwhelmed. Like I woke up, I turned my phone on and I thought it was going to combust because all the notifications were like coming in. There were all the congratulations on Instagram. There were people reposting the post and like their stories and stuff. I just remember being so overwhelmed every time a purchase came in. There were people who were buying like 5 books at a time. And also I only posted it on Instagram. So, if you happen to catch it, like within those specific hours, but people were just sharing it for like days and days and days on end. And at one point I just had to turn off all like the little purchase order notifications that were coming through my phone because I was just so overwhelmed. So that first weekend, like within the first 24 hours, 250 something sales. And I was like, damn, did I just recoup all my costs?
That's amazing, right? That really goes to show the power in sharing your dream with the world, right?
Yeah.
You really, you didn't know how to do it, but you figured it out. And then when you actually put it out into the world, the reception, the love, like people were waiting to support you, right? People were waiting. People saw in you something that for so long you had these doubts, you had these insecurities, you had these hesitations. But when you finally decided to put the car in drive, honey, what happened, right?
Listen, vroom, vroom. It was such an incredible experience. But I think the biggest takeaways from all of that was that even while I was working on the cookbook, like obviously I wasn't making YouTube videos, right, at that point in time, because I didn't have the bandwidth to like do recipes there and edit them and all that stuff while still being in the process of writing recipes for Early Enough. But what I did do was just post short format recipes on my page. So like I'd post a picture of something and then you swipe and then the full recipe card is over there. I think what it did was it sort of like built up this momentum of like usability and relatability with my recipes that got people excited, even though I hadn't even really fully shared. Like I would tease on like my Instagram stories. Oh, a cookbook is coming. When we were doing the photo shoot, I'd share like a couple behind the scenes things. But for the turnaround time to kind of be what it was, and this is the part that nobody else knows, the book was not together in August 13th when I dropped it. I had photos and that was it. I had recipes that were like written already and that was it. But there was no book yet. The book was not even real.
Did you have a drop date for the pre-order? Did people know when to expect it to be dropped for it to go?
So the original drop date was supposed to be like late September. And that was an error on my part because I completely underestimated how long book printing takes. And also at the point that like I'd already hired a designer, like I'd already booked a designer to do the interior of the book for me. And then they backed out. So I had to learn how to design the inside of the cookbook from
Don't
scratch.
tell me you did that all yourself.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Courtney.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's also
I would
crazy.
never do it again. I know. I would never do no foolishness like that again. It was incredible. Like, I learned so many lessons. Like, Raina, when I tell you, this is the most, I'm so confident in like who I am as a chef, like now, because I had to like really get this experience out the mud. Like, this was just so very homegrown and hands-on, and like every backdrop in the book, there isn't a surface in that book that like I didn't paint. Like, all of them are things I did. I painted them all, all of the like props and the styling, like me and Jackie, we did that. Obviously all the food I cooked it, every drink, I eventually drank it. It was a very like homegrown, do it yourself, bootstrapped sort of thing. And I was in a position where I was ready to hire help. Like, I'd been saving, like my whole savings went into this book. Food photographers, they're not cheap, printing the physical books themselves, it's not cheap. All the things that I wanted to do, I bought all the ingredients, like all of these things I self-funded. And so I think the greatest thing that I'm glad that I did, even though I didn't really talk about the cookbook like a whole lot kind of in the time like leading up to me actually dropping the pre-order, but I'm glad I did it on my birthday, which also, if you ever want to sell a product, see if you can roll it out like around an occasion that's real special to you. Turning 26 and like having my book go like crazy with the sales was one of the coolest things I've ever done. But also it gives people that much more reason to support you. Like, if people really like mess with you, consider rolling out a product on your birthday and see if people like don't go extra ham. Cause I also feel like there were people who just bought it cause like it's my birthday today. And that's the equivalent of like cash apping me, except they get something out of it,
Yeah. So talk to me about the moment that your baby was in your hand for the first time. How did that feel? AKA your baby, AKA your book, Early Enough.
Yes. Early Enough is definitely like my child, because I did spend 9 months on that thing. I wept. I cried like a baby when I finally held it. Like, when it finally arrived from the printer, people were like starting to get like upset with me, rightfully so, because the book was taking so long to arrive. One girl accused me of being a scammer, which I thought was hilarious.
Because you also had people who didn't know you that were buying from you, right? You had people who...
Right. But this girl did know me, which is why I was like, I lit her ass up. I sure did. But like privately, like in a side thing. And I don't believe in doing that. But I'm like, girl, I've been running whole businesses for years, and you've ordered from me before, and you got the free ebook. Like, I sent out a cocktail version of the ebook, or the ebook version of the cocktail section, because it was taking so long. So everybody who pre-ordered got that section early, because I recognized that there were delays that they did not sign up for. And so I wanted to do my best with that. And I'm like, why would I shoot a book and not print the book? Well, that doesn't make any sense. And so it was just weird for her to like try to call me a scammer, but whatever. So when I was finally holding it after like weeks and weeks and weeks of like waiting and being frustrated alongside all the really wonderful people who had supported the book, I was delirious. I cried. Like, there's one copy of the book, I kept it, it's my copy, that just has tear stains on like every other page. Like, I just cried all up and through the damn book. It was so incredible to finally see it and to see the images up close, because I'd been seeing it on my laptop this whole time. I didn't even get like a proof before everybody else did. It came to me the same time it went to the rest of the world. And it was crazy, because I feel like I didn't get to have that sort of like intimate moment of like sitting with it before everybody else did. Well, I mean, I kind of did, because then I had to ship the books out, but just being able to like sit with it and like really just love on it and reflect back on like all the intention that I put into it was really powerful for me. And it kind of affirmed why I'd taken on such a hard process anyway. If anybody had told me how laborious writing a cookbook and self-publishing was going to be when I started, I might not have done it. So I'm really glad that I was willing to just kind of keep going with the flow, because I saw at a point I had seen the vision and there was no coming back from that. And I would absolutely do it again. I wouldn't necessarily encourage other people to do it. I don't know. I feel like you got to be like built for this sort of chaos to do something specifically like this, like a cookbook. Like, writing a book and writing a cookbook are two equally laborious like labors of love. Like, they're equally difficult to do, but the project management that goes into writing a cookbook is not for the weak. And like, I was
and doing it yourself,
doing
like
this.
the layout. That's probably the hardest part. I mean, I'm not going to say, what was the hardest part?
Oh, the layout for sure.
Okay, I was going to say that
It
because
was the layout.
and just understanding like file management and how to send it to the printer and bleed and all that, like, right? Like,
yes,
it must
it was
have
a
been
lot. I learned so much.
What do you think was the single most thing that you learned about your abilities as a dream driver during that time period?
What I learned is that, and bear with me, because I feel like when I say this, it might sound a little like untoward. But whatever I think I am, I am.
That makes perfect sense.
That's what I learned this year. Like whatever I think I am, whoever I think I am, I am. The hard part is in challenging myself to even go beyond that.
So give me two things who were you? Two adjectives or two now. Like, what were you in 2020?
I was willing
mm-hmm.
and dynamic. Coming out of this and thinking about like, who did I transform into? I already knew that my skill set was a dynamic one, but I was willing to show up in that. And it pushed me that much harder. And then I kept showing up in more dynamic and interesting ways for myself and for others. That I think is even pushing me to like where I want to be now. If those were the two words, that's it for me.
Right. And I feel like blessings come when you show up for yourself, right? Because I know you mentioned this earlier, how you now have a whole virtual event business. Talk to us a little bit about how that got started and how the momentum from everything that you did from February or March 2020, right? How that led you to now having this whole new revenue stream for yourself.
Yeah, the virtual classes are such a fun thing for me. It started out because I was doing the videos, and I wanted like the more comfortable I got in front of the camera when it was just me here by myself. I was like, I really want to educate people like on food. And I know a lot of like very random things about food, science facts, and, all types of stuff. And I'd find that even when I was in here, like when I'm not cooking for the videos, I would be like explaining it as though there were people here. Which was like a really like quirky thing that like I picked up over the course of quarantine, just being here by myself so long. And I was like, it'd be kind of nice to like teach, like do a class, everybody's always asking me how I do these things. And, I'm putting out this video content for the free. Let me see if I can't monetize, all of this education that I have and want to share. And so it started off that way. So I did, it was just a regular like cooking with Courtney class. I, drew up the flyer, put it out there. I did a second class, drew up the flyer, put it out there. The third one was right around all of the Black Lives Matter protests and the murder of Breonna Taylor. And I, for one, was like craving this sort of sense of community, right? Like we're all in our homes or we're out on the front lines. And where is there space, for us? And my whole thing has been holding space for people. That's what the dinner parties were about. They were about holding really cultural safe spaces for people who look like me and for people who don't. And I was like, okay, I want to do something and I want to be able to like give back, but I'm not really sure how to do that outside of the context of food. And it's like, Courtney, food itself is okay. So I gave myself permission in that sense. And then I came out with Comfort with Courtney, which was one of my biggest cooking classes. And I donated all of the funds actually, which ended up being a little bit over $1,000. It was like $10 per person to join this class. I wanted it to be really accessible. And we just cooked together and like held space and, like listen to music. And it was meant to be like just a really just space holding, sort of thing. But I loved it so much. And it had so much more meaning than any of the other classes that I had taught. And then I just started kind of like rolling with that. So then the theme of like cooking with Courtney, comfort with Courtney just kind of kept rolling from there. And then eventually, and I don't remember who it was, asked me to do a cooking class for their company because they joined like a couple of my personal like private cooking classes. And I was like, hell yeah, like let's do it. And that's something about me. I say yes to pretty much everything. Like if it makes sense, I'm gonna say yes. So I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? So I did a cooking class and it was so much fun. And then I posted on in my Instagram story, not even on my real Instagram, like static page, like, oh, just finished a corporate cooking class for, whatever company. And then from there, almost like maybe 5 or 6 people that same day were like, oh, would you be willing to do a cooking class for my company? And I'm like, yeah. And it just kind of like rolled from there. And now it's like a full part of my offering. And in fact, will be the reason that I'm able to quit my day job.
I'm just over here smiling because I'm just genuinely so happy for you, Courtney. And I think you are an example of what happens when you just put it out there. People are, I keep saying this, but sometimes we limit ourselves when we just don't, when we don't at least try, right? You could have started these cooking classes and it was not working for you. It was just not the thing, but you realized it was. And then you realized that you also were taking advantage of the times, right? You were being smart. You were being strategic from a business perspective as well. Like, listen, everyone's virtual nowadays. Companies are trying to find ways to engage with their employees. Corporate companies, they have budget now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cutting back on a whole bunch of other overhead, right? So they have money, which I know, I want to ask you this too, is you share this in one of your Instagram posts, but just how you were able to recoup the cost from your book, right? How I think you said you made more than in your day job with the corporate cooking classes in like a certain amount of time or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the cookbook itself is like, it's a moneymaker, but it's not a profit generator necessarily. Because books, of course, are very expensive. So like I'm easily spending, it's like $25 a book to get them printed because I'm not doing it at like gigantic scale like most printers do. When you're printing, hundreds of thousands of books, the books are going to be like $3 a book. That's why they're able to be sold so cheaply, on Amazon, $16, things like that. Because I self-pubbed and because, it was pre-order in the beginning, cost was something that I had to be incredibly mindful of. So, I was like, all right, like I'll probably sell, like my goal was to sell 1,000 books in a calendar year. And I'm like, yeah. And then like, that'll be worth it to me. That's $50,000 in additional income, but not necessarily $50,000 in profit. And I was like, yeah, that's a real like sustainable goal. That's real cute. So I kind of like had that to the side and I was like, nice. The corporate cooking classes though, I charge what I charge, but if I do like 10 classes in a month, which think about it, I do 2-hour classes, that's 20 hours a month, as opposed to my day job where I work 40 hours a week. And I make the same.
Wow.
And like, if people wanted to run some numbers backwards, you could go watch my Glamour video and find out how much money I make in my corporate job. And like, we could do some quick math, but like, it's very sustainable. And the great thing is I'm not spending money the way that I was before on food to do dinner parties, right? Because fresh food is a huge profit eater. So now that I'm just doing virtual classes, it's definitely a really great setup. So much so that like I could totally just like never work corporate again, and just do like virtual cooking classes, 20 hours a month, 10 classes, 10 2-hour classes, and live comfortably, which I'm super grateful for. So it definitely has like shown up as like a really strong revenue stream that doesn't require the sort of labor that like writing the cookbook did. And that doesn't require the sort of labor that catering does, because you're just not going to make that sort of profit margin. And the other thing is I just didn't want to tire my body out anymore.
Yeah.
What I realized after 8 years of consecutive being in the kitchen, four intense years of that were with Thunder Cakes, baking, however many cakes a week. I was doing like upwards of 200 or something a month. The work that like I put my body through, like the high intensity, hot kitchen, bad hips type stuff. I'm 26 and my back sounds like a kettle chip when I crack it. Like it's problematic. And I definitely need a really good chiropractor because I have just put my body through a lot so early on, just from cooking all the time. And I don't necessarily want to do that sort of labor when I can exercise creative labor now. Yeah. That's an opportunity for me that I really want to tap into. So Yeah, I feel like that's kind of been like the biggest thing to kind of come out of this for me. It's just, it's been a change in the way that I look at labor and what's worth it to me to make a certain amount of dollars. Like I probably won't, I'm not doing any dinner parties through the end of 2021 because I don't have to. And because I'm actually best used teaching other people how to cook.
So what's the dream then, Courtney? Like how has the dream changed and what's next for you? What's next on the horizon?
So I'm really excited about this because I'm finally pouring all my resources back into myself and it feels really nice. But I am shooting a show.
What?
And yes.
Like with the okay, keep going. I won't interrupt you.
Okay. So I've always wanted to shoot this. I always imagine, and this is the funny thing about like, you know, technology as it advances, there are just so many things that have now been democratized, right? Like platforms like YouTube exist so that everybody has access to the same sort of like production, well, not same sort of production value, but like you have the opportunity to get the same sort of reach on a platform like YouTube that, you know, some people don't even get on Food Network. And those are the sort of things that like, as I really started thinking about like what's next in my career are things that I do want to take advantage of. Like I've got an audience. I need to provide them with really high quality content. And that's something that now, like we're concepting for the show. It is going to be centered somewhat around Early Enough and just, you know, my love of brunch and cocktail pairings and just diving into all the things that I really love to do, because I feel like I do want to tap into all the things that I love. I love furniture restoration. I love, you know, cocktail creation. I love flavor development. I love, my apartment doesn't reflect it right now, but I love like home organization. Like there are a lot of things that I really want to tap into and share with people that I feel like I, for whatever reason, had just kind of not been doing. So that's what I'm focusing in on like right now. So we're going to start shooting in March, which is really, really cool for me. We're doing like hella episodes about all the things that I love. And we're going to roll them out, share them with the world, hopefully get some, you know, brand sponsors. And then in the midst of all of that, continue content creating and, you know, really, really like growing as a chef instructor. Like that's where I'm at. Like if you ask me now what I call myself, I'm a chef, comma, instructor, comma, content creator, comma, cookbook author. My corporate job don't have anything to do with things I list at this point in my life anymore. And that for me is such a huge departure from what I imagined for myself. But I'm really excited about it. I feel like there's a genuine future for me in, you know, the world of chef instructing and sharing with people how to make really excellent food in their own homes.
Knowing you, Courtney, I feel like once the show drops, you know it's gonna be some other blessing around the corner, right? You just gotta wait to see what is this gonna lead you to next. So I am just so happy, so excited for you. I know what's the world like? What's the saying? Not the world is your oyster. What's the damn saying? I can't even remember, but you know what I'm saying.
Like, the world is your oyster.
The world is your oyster, right? Like you really, there are going to be pearls coming your way out of this next new excursion of yours. So I am just so excited for you, and I just thank you for coming on and just sharing your journey. But Courtney, I had to ask you this, right? The last time that our listeners heard from you was January 2017. If you could go back in time and say something to Courtney then, what would it be?
Gosh, I would say to myself, it's corny because it rhymes, but don't put yourself on the shelf. Like I'm delayed in a lot of the things that I wanted for myself. Not delayed, right? Because like I believe in divine timing and God has been doing his thing for many, many years for me now, right? Like we've been in this for 26 years. Every year has been lit. I put a lot of who I was becoming on the back burner to pursue things that made other people money, that made other people happy. You know, working in corporate was I saw it as like my future and not as a means to an end. And I put myself on the shelf as a result of that. And if I had gone as balls to the wall for my side ventures as I am right now, maybe I would be, you know, in a different place. Like it's not that I have regrets. I just feel like I have always owed it to myself to show up for myself in that way in full faith. And so I kind of like played the middle a little bit and was just like, okay, I'm not really sure, I don't really know that I want to put myself out there. That's what I mean by putting myself on a shelf. And I'll never do it again. I know that.
Well, thank you again, Courtney. I feel like that was the perfect ending to this part 3 of Courtney's dream. And listen, maybe in 4 years, you don't know, it's going to be a part 4. I'm going to be in a different place. Because in January 2017, I didn't have a baby, right? I wasn't here trying to juggle interviews with well, he's awake now, but he was sleeping before, right? So it's like our life changed, our dreams evolve, right? And it's what we do when the dream evolves that really matters. And I know that this is going to be inspiring and encouraging to anybody, any dream driver listening in who is unsure of what's next. They know they have these blessings. They know they have these gifts. It's really like, put it out there and the dream will evolve. It will, as you would say, it will, you know how you put something in the oven and it bakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you got to do with your dream. Mic drop, mic drop.
What? Yes, we love it.
Let that dream bake. Don't leave it on the counter, right? Don't leave it on the counter to get moldy, to let rodents get to it. You got to put it in places that will help it grow to what it was always meant to be. So thank you, Courtney.
We love it. Thank you, Raina.
Hey, so if you made it to the end of the interview, you are going to be hearing a little bonus clip / conversation that me and Courtney had after the interview was done. We turned on the video on Zoom and we had a little chat and she got to see baby Axe.
Hi, what's up, cutie patootie? Hi,
He's like, Ma, I need my diaper changed. I'm about to call his dad back in here like, come get this little boy. He's awake now.
Oh my gosh. Oh, he's so precious right now.
Thank you for being so patient with me too and just being flexible.
Yes,
girl, you said I got my head tie on. I'm making it happen.
Listen, I feel you.
I'm
right
making it happen because I just feel like, with me having a baby, it's like, how am I going to make things work? I'm legit in a new stage of my life. And I'm like, listen, these interviews going to have to happen again. You're going to have to figure out how to do it. You might hear a little baby for a little bit, but the content is what really is going to inspire people as what it's supposed to be. So don't let this little man hold me back. So that's really what I'm trying to remember now is to just keep going.
But I will say this though, like the content is what matters, but the context matters too. Like the fact that you are a mom and are balancing this love and this career that you've built, this passion that you have, this gift, because you're gifted. Nobody, and I say this all the time, nobody in the game ask questions like you do.
Nobody. You, boo. Thank you.
And I mean that. Like I've done a lot of podcasts, Raina. Like I've done a lot of them. And like conversations just don't flow as well. And like that's beyond me. I've heard you, but the context matters. You are a mom now and you are still putting your boop boop dreams in drive. That's important. That's inspiring. And it's going to continue to inspire people. So like don't discount yourself as like part of that.
Thank you. And I always tell myself maybe this will inspire a new, kind of like how you have new levels, right? Like something else is going to come from this blessing. My son, I don't regret my son. He will definitely be, I'm just so excited to see where things go from here.
And I think even like as he gets older, it'll be interesting to like have conversations with him maybe in your podcast. Like, I don't know what like Mommy and Me, podcast things are like out there, but like as he gets older or like if you want to share like your thoughts on parenting, if you want to do a pivot to like dreams and, parenting, like there's so much opportunity there. And with the way your mind works, because you're just so freaking brilliant, I absolutely see there being opportunities for you to like continue to grow and expand and give people just like relevant content. Like right now, more than ever, so many people can relate to you. You're trying to work from home
with a baby on a Saturday,
right.
It really is a blessing. And, I was thinking like Dreams and Drive Kids, maybe I can start having kids on the show or do like little kids. When he gets older, he could interview kids like, my mom was this and how do you, it's just going to be so interesting to see. I'm excited to see how what's going to be his dream and how am I going to be instrumental in helping it come alive? You know?
Yeah. Oh, I love seeing you as a mom. You know, this does it for me. It gives me all the feels.
Yes. He was fairly good, you know. I think, and it's also, I feel like he's going to get used to seeing me in this. Like, you know how kids who, like, you know, let's say you have a kid one day, they're going to get used to seeing you in the kitchen, and they're going to kind of know how to act when you're in the kitchen. All right, so that's a wrap for episode 258 with Courtney. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you haven't already listened to episode 59 and 60, where Courtney shares part 1 and part 2 of her story, please go back and listen to that. If you really enjoyed this episode, I'm going to ask you to please share it with your community. The best way you can do it is by screenshotting wherever you're listening right now and post it to your social media, Instagram stories, Facebook, wherever. Post it and then tag us. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can use our hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing. If you want to be part of our weekly email newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly updates emailed right to your inbox every week, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And guys, if you want to support the show, there are 2 ways that you can do so. You can go to dreamsanddrive.com/donate and see our options there, or you can go and shop our merchandise online. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop to get your Dreams and Drive t-shirt or your Dreams and Drive crew neck sweatshirt. I appreciate the love every week. I'm really excited to get back to the swing of things by interviewing guests again. I am making it happen. Quick note behind the scenes, I did this whole interview with Courtney with a baby in my lap, guys. You probably couldn't tell. You probably could, but I'm making it happen by any means possible. So I really appreciate all the love, and I really appreciate you guys supporting the show. 5 years later, we're still going strong. As always, keep dreaming, keep driving, and I can't wait for you guys to hear next week's guest. Bye.